Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the VikingGenetics webinar. My name is Matthew Stott. I'm Country Manager for the UK and Ireland. We're just going to go through a few introductory slides with you before I pass across to Peter Larson to take us through the main topics of the webinar. Today's webinar is titled, Is Breeding for Type Merit the Future for Jersey Genetics? And the topics we're going to cover during the webinar are how to achieve the balanced breeding goal relying on different sire profiles, functional conformation and genetic correlations between type traits and other traits, and breeding for healthy, fertile and efficient Jersey cows. Just a few housekeepings here. So the webinar is being recorded tonight, and the recording will be sent via email to all participants. You'll notice that all participants of the webinar are actually muted, so there's no chat function in terms of physical voices, but do feel free to use the chat function. And also, if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to submit them in the questions box. We have time booked for questions and answers during and after the presentation. And if we don't have time to answer all questions, then we will make sure that we get replies to the participants following the webinar this evening. So I'd like to introduce Peter Larson, who is the Senior Jersey Breeding Manager at VikingGenetics. Peter's got over 30 years in the cattle breeding industry. He's an experienced Jersey judge, and he's also a co-founder and executive secretary of the European Jersey Association. So Peter, I'd like to now pass across to yourself to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Matt. It's a great pleasure for me to be here tonight and to be able to introduce you to some of the topics that we're working with in the Jersey breeding program in VikingGenetics. The title of this webinar, you've seen it, it's Breeding for Type Merit, the future for the Jersey genetics. And some of the topics Matt just touched shortly. It might be that I will jump a little in these topics, but I will cover them all throughout the presentation. On the next slide, some of the key questions in this webinar. Are you looking for ways to increase efficiency in your Jersey herd? I presume you are, and I presume that most of you have given it some thoughts, and we have definitely given it some thoughts as well, and I'll show you how we handle some of these questions. Would you like to breed cows that are high producing and long lasting? Not necessarily traits, high production and longevity that are closely related positively or correlated positively, but we can handle that as well. And finally, would you like to have trouble-free cows that don't require too much of your attention? Yes, I presume we will, giving you a better, easier life as a dairy farmer. And that's also something I'll try to answer throughout this presentation. On the next slide, just to introduce you a little bit to where I come from, the basis of the Viking Jersey breeding program is Denmark and the Danish Jersey population. The Danish Jersey population makes out 69,000 purebred milk-recorded Jersey cows. And in addition to that, we also have cooperation with other partners, France, UK, Norway, and of course, Sweden, Finland, with very few Jerseys are also joining this program. Average herd size, 223. It's the biggest herd size across breeds in Denmark. Jersey herds are bigger than Holstein herds, approximately 20 cows bigger. We only make out 13.5% of the total dairy cow population in Denmark, but keeps increasing in numbers and in ratio, whereas the others drop a little bit. Production, you can see here, we are known for very high percentage of fat and protein. I'll come back to that. Number of treatments per cow per year. We register everything in Denmark. We, the farmers themselves and the veterinarians do that. So these treatments, they are also include retreatment. They also include hoof health. So it seems high, but when you count all treatments, it's not that high, and it's definitely much lower than for other breeds. Somatic cell counts 213 right now, and age first calving 23.6, lowering all the time. Then we go to the overall breeding goal, or the overall breeding merit for not only the Jerseys but all the Nordic countries. It's called the Total Merit Index, the Nordic Total Merit Index. And on the next slide tells a little more about how many traits are included. We managed to measure breeding values on 90 different sub-traits and 15 main traits. And the reason for us being able to measure breeding values for that many traits is that all farmers have a tradition for registration of everything that's possible to register. And our veterinarians, our AI technicians, our slaughterhouses, our dairy companies all gather data for one central database and enabling us to measure all these breeding traits. And it's described a little more in the next slide, where all these 15 different main traits are mentioned. Production index covering milk, fat, protein, growth, not of importance for the Jersey breed, but still it's there. Saved feed, one of the latest, all the latest that we have introduced. Fertility and the sub-indices, infertility, days open from calving to first, days from first to last insemination, numbers of insemination, etc., both for heifers and cows. And you can see all the rest of them. This webinar is recorded, so you will get the video afterwards, so that you can go back and dig deeper into this. I will come back to most of these traits throughout the webinar. On the next slide, we've set focus on 3 of the health traits. It has been natural for us to work with health and the genetics related to health for many, many years, starting back in 1982 with the first registrations of mastitis, then 10 years later, somatic cell counts, then other conformation traits included. So we have included more and more in what we today call our other health index. And this enables us to get an index at a very early stage, but also an index with very high reliability. Hoof health is quite new, starting in Sweden back in 2011, where hoof trimmers started to register these 7 different diseases in the hoof, and now it's widely used in the VikingGenetics countries. But for Jerseys, data was limited from the start, and we have only been working with hoof health for 3 years in the Jersey breed. We'll come back to that as well. General health, reproductive diseases, ketosis and other metabolic diseases, feet and leg problems. And for Jerseys, it's actually more or less milk fever that's included in this, because for the reproductive diseases, ketosis and feet and leg problems, Jerseys have very limited problems. So other general health index is mainly milk fever. I've shown you some trends on the next slide, and the first one telling about production, other health, general health, fertility, young stock survival, longevity. And note that for all or nearly all, there is a very positive trend. This is showing the bulls, the average breeding value of the bulls, and bulls are getting better and better. But if you note the one on the top back in 2001, 2, 3, it is the hoof health. And as I mentioned before, we were not able to work with that for jerseys because not until 3 years ago, we had an index for the jerseys. And now we are able to include it in our breeding, and we are able to breed for better hoof health. We are lucky that we haven't missed it all, and there has been quite a stable development for hoof health. But now when including it in our Nordic Total Merit, we can change the trend, and we will. On the next slide, there are shown some of the other traits, and it is the conformation traits: frame, udder, feet and legs, and also workability traits, milkability, and temper. And here again, you can see some of the traits with very, very good steep genetic trend: frame and udder, feet and legs more or less stable, but a small improvement. And for milkability and temperament, nearly no change. And the reason for that is that we put very, very limited emphasis on these two, as the economic value is low, and also that it is not a problem for the Jersey breed. In the next slide, you'll see that the weights, relative weights in the NTM of different traits. Yield or production, 1/3 of the weight in the NTM. And of course, it has to have a very high value or very high weight, because this is where the money comes from. This is creating income, and where most of the others create costs. Fertility has a high weight with 10%, Autohealth 17%. That's natural. Autohealth, we put a little extra weight on Autohealth, so that I call it political, because we want to drive the genetic trend for Autohealth even more than what is economic viable. But we want to speed up a little bit on that trait. You can also see that for a couple of traits, we have no weight or nearly none for growth, but also for frame and for temperament, persistency. Those are traits that we do not find as economic we do not find the economic importance so high that it actually can have weight in NTM. We want to increase genetic trait, the genetic trend for other more important traits. Then last, saved feed is included from last year, August last year, with 7%. And I'll come back to saved feed now and introduce you to our feed efficiency index. It's called the saved feed index. You can see it on the next slide, that it's a combination of a maintenance part and a metabolic part. The maintenance is what we started with originally. That's correlated trait to efficiency, live weight, its conformation traits combined with the production. So it is not efficiency directly, but it is a correlated trait. Then the metabolic efficiency. This is the efficiency that is measured directly on individual cows' feed intake. And then we add also information about yield, weight, pregnancy, etc. We have developed our own system to measure this metabolic efficiency. We have developed what we call the C-feed, the cattle feed intake program, and it's just shown on in the next slide how we developed it. From back in 2013, we started with developing evaluation, we started to activities to develop, and we had the brainstorms to try and find out how can we measure feed intake on individual basis and not using weights or scales, because scales are expensive and difficult to manage. So we invented what we call the cattle feed intake technology, and it's based on 3D cameras. It's cameras that are hanging over the cows when they are eating, taking 3D photos every 2 seconds. And these 3D photos can be used to measure how much feed disappeared, how much feed was moved away, and then we can measure the total feed intake when the cow was standing there. This is the correlation between this and using scales is 98%. So it's very high. This system does not interrupt anything in the farm. It's hanging 4 to 4.5, 5 meters over the cows. So you can do your feeding management without taking notice of the cameras. They are hanging there all day, all year, and taking photos all the time. We also use the cameras for identification of the cows, and we can use the cameras to measure the weight of the cows, how much they weigh, and we expect in future maybe also to use these 3D cameras to do some condition scores, but also conformation scores. So we started to publish the efficiency index back in 2019. Then we included it was included in NGM from last year, and from 2020 we started to use these C-feed data from 3D cameras. And on the next slide you can see we are now having data from 2,000 jerseys, and we are increasing the numbers all the time, putting up cameras in more and more herds, and the intention is that we should have 15,000 cows included in this within the next year or two. And this enables us to measure breeding values on the bulls. In the bottom of this slide, I've shown how much effect there is of this. 20 index units from a bull results in a lower dry matter intake of 70 to 100 kilograms of feed per lactation per cow, per daughter of this bull. So there is an effect. It has a huge impact on the efficiency of the cows. Any questions so far before we go to conformation traits?
There's one question here, Peter. Zero weighting frame yet, save feed maintenance equals stature, body depth and chest width. Will you change Jersey frame value?
Maybe not frame as such, but when this will show you something about how we measure our frame index and how we use our frame index. We can discuss whether we should put more or less weight on different traits in frame, but we use it a little bit because there are some correlation to some of the traits in frame correlation to other traits. So if we have no weight on frame today, but still we have a positive trend for frame, and that means that cows actually are getting a better body, more what we like, and it comes from higher production. But when the production increases, the body of the cow is developing, so there is a positive correlation there. So without putting or using any weight on frame, we are still getting a positive trend and positive development for body. So I doubt that we will put weight on frame in NGM. I'll start showing you a little about the conformation traits. First one is the frame, and on the next slide you'll see how much weight we have on individual traits in frame. Stature is quite low today. It's only 6%. Body depth and chest width, quite good weight, 14 and 13. And dairy form has been lowered a little bit as well. Then we have quite a big weight on top line, and some on rump, and some of the coats for body, and they are something extra, something that's not described in the others is put here. It can be twisted tail, it can be a twisted nose, it can be something like that we also put emphasis on in those 10%. The reason why we have 25% in top line is that top line is actually positively correlated to longevity. So there's a positive correlation between the top line and longevity, some health traits, whereas there is a negative correlation between stature and some of the others. So when measuring these traits and putting or these weights on different traits, we look at the correlations to others, and I'll come back to the correlations. Next group is the feet and legs. In feet and legs, we have nearly the same weight on all, 20% on rear leg side view, on rear legs rear view, on the hock quality, then bone quality a little lower and foot angle a little higher. Hock quality and bone quality is traits that are quite specific for Nordic countries. Those two traits relates also to longevity and to some of the feet and legs diseases, and that's why we have included them. Next and last is autoconfirmation, and autoconfirmation is a little bit special because we have only today included weight on 5 traits. The foreorder attachment, 27%, other support or ligament, 13%, 4% on other depth, and then 13% on both the teeth placement and other balance. Other balance is also a trait that is unique in our system. We want the bottom of the udder to be flat, not too deep in rear, not too deep in front, and that's why we have started to measure this. We want the jerseys to be able to be milked in all kinds of milking systems. This is what we call functional udder. The reason why the Jersey board decided this type of weighting was that you can drive the genetic trend faster by only having weight on the most important traits, or those traits that really need some attention. We have been doing this for 5 years, but right now discussing to include some of the other traits again. And those traits that are left out, they are rear udder attachment, rear udder width, teeth length, teeth thickness, and teeth placement in front. The reason why we want to or will include some of them again is that it's very hard to understand that a bull that is positive for all these traits here will be extremely positive, even if he's negative for some of the traits that are left out. And the bull that's the opposite, it looks very strange that he, when being negative for some of the traits here and positive for all the traits that are left out, he would look very, very bad. We think that we will. I think that the conclusion will be, and the decision will be made within the next month. I think the decision will be that we will have rear udder in again. We will have teeth length or teeth thickness. They are closely correlated. One of them will come in again, and then we will drop the weight on udder balance, because others are in balance right now. We were nervous that the others should be too deep in front, but it seems that they are not going to be, and then we will leave out that. The reason for very high weight on foreudder attachment and udder depth is that they are highly correlated to mastitis and cell count. So I am sure they will still have the highest weight in future, but we will include more traits. It'll be easier for you to understand. Then to the correlations. And if we go to correlations to frame, then you will see that there is a very negative correlation between frame and shaped feet. So the bigger the cows, the less feed efficiency. So a very, very big cow is not the most efficient when it comes to converting feed into milk. And the main reason for this is the maintenance part, that big cows, they need more feed for maintenance. They can have a good metabolic efficiency, but they have to feed themselves to maintain their condition. And then there is a negative correlation to fertility, 28%, to feed and leg, 25%, general health, 15%, and longevity, 13%. So more or less all other traits are negative correlated to frame, except from the frame traits themselves. If you breed for frame, you'll get higher cows, you'll get more body capacity, you'll get better rump, but you will have problems getting as high a genetic progress for other traits, those that are mentioned here, when breeding for frame. But that is then not said that you should not breed for type, but be aware that frame is not economically the most viable way to go. Next correlations are the correlations to feet and legs. And here you can see, well, to frame, it's not a surprise because you just saw it before, but there is a positive correlation between feet and legs and fertility, positive to hoof health, positive to general health and longevity. So breeding for feet and legs, strong feet and legs, also makes your cows a little bit more fertile and makes them live longer. Not a surprise, all of it, but still, it is nice to know how close they are correlated, the relation between feet and legs and other traits. Lastly, the udder conformation. And udder conformation, safe feed, I've shown it before. There is a negative correlation between safe feed and udder conformation. No, I didn't show that, but there is a negative correlation between safe feed and udder conformation. And part of that can relate to the production, because safe feed affects production and udder conformation, they are negative correlated. The more production, the more challenged are the udders. But there is a positive correlation to longevity, to frame, to udder health. So if you breed for frame, if you breed for bigger cows, you will also get higher production. But do not breed for frame to get higher production. If you want higher production, then go for the production index. Do not go indirectly for the trait. Go directly for the trait. Then on the next couple of slides, I'll show you what is driving some of the traits. Here it's longevity. NGM, there's a high correlation between NGM and longevity. So when breeding for NGM, you get 38% of what you could have achieved in longevity if you were breeding only for longevity. You get some longevity from general health, from fertility, Autohealth, etc. So our longevity index is residual longevity, and in other traits, there's also some effects on longevity. Then a little more, or maybe we should just see if there were questions to the confirmation so far before I dig deeper into health.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions, Peter.
Yeah.
First question is, reduce feed intake at what cost? Output, fertility, body condition. Comments on that?
I do not have figures on that right now, but we will get some figures from this three-dimensional photos and from this CFeed project, where we can compare the effects on reduced feed and body condition. But we haven't started to use body condition scores from the cameras, but we will. We know that it's possible because the cameras can identify the cows and the condition already today, but we haven't done the final research on this and the final trials on it. But it will come. The way the camera identified the cow, it's not the ear tag, it's not the number on the back of the or the rump of the cows. It is by measuring how wide is the cow over the back, how wide is she in the chest, and so on. So it's still photos identifying the cow, and therefore you can also identify the conditions.
Okay, another question. What is the average lactation yield in Denmark?
Average lactation yield? I will come back to that and show you in a minute. I have a little bit about the milk production as well. I'll show you.
Okay, and then another question. Why has temperament such a low value when this is a weak link in genomic evaluation? Nothing worse than a naughty cow, and that's being polite in brackets.
Yeah, but you're right. It is a big point because we are getting less and less registrations on temper. But the reason for not having it included with higher weight is that the economic value is very low. We have measured the economic value in this way. We look at why when the cows leave the herd, when they go for slaughter, and then we combine that with the score for temperament. And we have not found a high correlation between when they leave for slaughter and temperament. We find high correlations between production, low production, and slaughter, low fertility and slaughter, but not temperament. And we do not hear from farmers that they have problems with temperament. Otherwise, we had to act according to what we hear from the farmers. So very few problems. But we are aware that we have limited data and we are getting less, and we might be able to, we might have to in future to pay for having cows scored for temperament to have enough data to measure breeding values.
Okay, and then a final question here. What is the average number of lactations per cow in their lifetime, and has that increased?
It has actually increased a little bit lately. Today in Denmark, it's 3 lactations, 3.0, but it was down at nearly down to 2.5 and then gone up again. And we're seeing cows getting older and older nowadays. It's nice to see, and the number of cows that are meeting these new records in production increasing all the time. I don't know, I think we have more than 50 cows now having been honored for more than 10,000 kilograms of fat and protein, and there are one herd had 3 cows with more than 10,000 kilos of fat and protein a month ago. 3 cows celebrated at the same time. So I would like it higher than 3 lactations. It will increase. The aim is 4 lactations, but production is also high. But I think it'll come. They will be older and have more lactations. Then I will go to something about health, and on the next slides you will see some of the developments and some of the trends as well. And then the first one is Autohealth, and here I've extracted some data from Interbull comparing different breed populations. In this case, it's bulls from Viking from US, New Zealand, Australia, and Canada. And note that the number of bulls from Canada are very limited, and that we do not have data in all years. But the trend for mastitis is quite good for the Viking bulls, and struggling a little more for some of the others. And we have been able to improve. Over the last 5 years, it was 8 index units. And now over the last 15 years, 8 index units. But when production goes up at the same time, and with the negative correlation between mastitis and production, it's amazing that you can still have a positive trend, make the cows more healthy when having higher and higher production. On average, 12 mastitis cases in 100 cow herd per year. It's a decent level, but we would like it lower. Next slide shows you about general health. It shows how high a percentage of the cows having a disease, and you can see some of them nearly nothing. And for other metabolic diseases, milk fever, as I mentioned before, it's a bit higher. So we know that the Jerseys have a higher ratio of milk fever, but that's the only disease complex where we have more than others. Then fertility has shown you just for one trait, and the reason on the next slide you can see interval from first to last insemination. Our fertility or daughter fertility index is a combination of both heifer and cow traits. But the most important, to my mind, is the interval from first to last insemination, because when you have made a decision, now I want to breed my cow, then it's very important that she gets pregnant as soon as possible. And this also affects number of inseminations, days open, etc. So this is, to my mind, the most important, and the trend is positive for this as well. Then on the next slide, I've shown you some of the effects of using average bulls or bulls that are good bulls, estimated breeding value of 110, EBV, estimated breeding value of 110, and our very best bulls with an estimated breeding value of 120. And you can see here the interval from calving to first insemination lowers when you use better bulls. Interval from first to last insemination lowers when you use better bulls, and the number of inseminations, both in heifers and cows, go down. So it's a very good way of showing how are the effects, and we do this for all traits. What are the effects of using an average bull, a good bull, and the very best bull? On the next slide, I showed, also informed you about that very early on. Average age at first calving, 23.7, and some are below 22. And many farmers, especially those having their young stock inside all year round, not having them on grass in early spring, late fall or autumn. They can have very have their heifers calve in very early. Next slide is about the longevity again, and this again interval figures showing that the genetics in our Jersey bulls is a little bit better than the genetics in the bulls from other population, and it amazes me a little bit that we have managed to actually take over the position from New Zealand, that had more long-lasting cows than what we had early on. But if you ask a New Zealand breeder, how many lactations do your cows milk? And often you will have 5-6 lactations as an answer, whereas you just heard me say before that ours do only milk for 3 lactations. But conditions are so different, production levels very different, and that also affects the longevity of the cows. What matters is the genetics in the cows, and when you use a Viking Jersey bull in New Zealand, they will last long. The daughters will last long under those conditions as well. Then to production, and you need to see some production figures before we end up with answering the final questions about the conformation and the type traits. Here you can see again genetic trends in different populations. I only shown butter fat production, and we are in the lead for butter fat production. If I showed you protein production, it would be another story with the Americans being in the lead. I'll tell you a little bit more about the level in US for protein production in a minute. On the next slide, you can see the production of fat and protein. That is what the farmers are paid for in Denmark. In Denmark or Nordic countries, in most European countries, you are paid for kilograms of fat and protein, and you actually it costs you to produce high volumes of milk. These figures, they are not from the same year, all of them, but showing that Denmark, US are in the lead for milk solid production, and very important under the conditions that we farm under here in the northern part of Europe. On the next slide, some trends that on fat and protein and fat percentage. You can see that over the last 7 years, there's been quite a good increase in the average protein and fat percentage. There are differences in the two curves. For protein, it's quite stable. There's a good positive trend. For fat, it goes a little bit up and down. And fat is affected by milk pricing. If the milk payment is changed in favor of fat, then farmers tend to add fat to the feeding ration. And if the price of fat goes down, you take out the fat from the feed ration again. So fat percentage is easier changeable by management, whereas protein is closer linked to genetics. But this is, of course, phenotype type. This is what we get from milk recording, and we are still improving on the percentages. It's healthier for the cows. It makes them longer living, and it also relates to feed efficiency. Next slide. Just something that matters to us, that our jerseys are purebred, and we require 99.5% pure jerseys in the cattle that we breed with. We made the decision back in 2009 that this was the requirement. It is not due to herd book rules or in EU or in Denmark. This is something that the Danish Jersey Cattle Association and now the VikingJersey board has decided to keep the population pure. Not that we are we are very strict in this, but not that we do not like cows with low percentage, but we do not like cows, Jersey cows, that has Holstein lethals included in them. We don't want monogenetic traits or lethals defects from other breeds included in our breeding, and we can avoid this better by being strict. And we were nervous that we will lose out, but we have experienced that we haven't done that by being so strict. And to sum up a little bit on the next slide, I talked about health, how we work with health, what traits are included, talked about the productions, and the purebreds and profitability relates to the medium size, that's long-lasting and efficient cows. So this was to sum up what I've been through so far. Any questions now?
Just one, Peter. Fat and protein. What percentage for Danish jerseys are? What percentage Danish jerseys are organic?
We are at the 20-25% organic, and it actually lowers the percentages a little bit. But the quite high ratio of organic herds in Denmark, and there are more organic farmers with milking jerseys than other breeds. Then I will go to some of these interval genetic levels. I mentioned before that I would comment the genetic level on protein, especially in US. And here you can see for milk, the US population is by far the highest with 117 its milk volume. Protein is 110 in US, whereas we are quite close with 106, but not as close as we would like to be, and where our population is the highest on butterfat. And this is kilos of milk, kilos of fat, kilos of protein, the genetic levels on those. But when you come to yield index, then we use the formula down below: a minus on milk, a plus on fat, and plus on protein. And the plus on fat and protein is the same. And this relates to the milk pricing in Denmark and in northern part of Europe, that there's not that big difference, or Nordic countries at least, there's not that big a difference between the payment for fat and protein. So right now we are working with this formula. So when looking at yield index, 107 for Viking jerseys and only 102 for US, this is the truth under Nordic conditions. And this is not the truth in US. If you are milking jerseys in Wisconsin, then you should look at the US figures here. But if you're milking jerseys in Oregon or Washington State, where the milk payment is more or less like in Denmark, then maybe you should use some of the Viking Jersey bulls. So be aware that conditions can be very different, and that you should pick the genetics fitting your conditions the best. Then I've shown conformation traits, frame and other, and back again, one slide back. Yeah, frame and udder, and here you can see on frame the Canadian and the American, they are higher because they have more developed bodies on their cows, and they are taller than the ones that we work with, and it gives higher breeding values. Udder conformation, not that big a difference between the Viking jerseys, the Canadian and the US. And here again, it's not the same traits that are included when measuring udder. So be aware of that. Autohealth, also a slight difference, and for the rest of the traits, but the way that we measure these traits, our population, our Viking Jersey bull population, is in the lead for health, longevity, and fertility. And on the next slide, just showing you some of the results from the August proofs. 4 out of 10 proven bulls on the US JPI list were Viking Jersey bulls, with VJ Guts being number 2. We are very proud of this. And on the fat and protein percent list, nearly all the bulls, top bulls, were Viking Jersey. That also count for somatic cell count list, and for the fertility lists, our bulls are doing quite well in US when they are daughter proven. When they are genomic, they do not do as well, relating to the correlations between our two systems not being 100% or not near. We still have some problems with correlations or conversions on genomic proofs. And on the PLI list in UK, 6 of the genomics are Viking Jersey bulls. All 10 on the healthy cow index lists in top 10 are Viking Jerseys, and also 6 of top 10 in the proven list are from our population. So especially when our bulls get daughter proven in other countries, they are doing very well. And it's very nice to see that our genomic program actually works, that we can rely on genomic breeding values. On next slide, showing a little bit the difference in different total merit systems. Here I've shown the JPI from US. I could have shown the net merit or cheese merit or others. They have several good indices. But here showing that the JPI puts a lot of focus on production and less focus on health, and still efficiency not included in the American, but it's ready and welcome. On the PLI and NTM, the Nordic, very close to each other, as you can see here. Small differences in between the two. So things are changing in all countries over time, and I think eventually we will have more similar composition of our net merit indices, but still there will be close relations to the conditions where the system is used. Then next slide showing a little about the semen categories that are used. Here you can see that nearly all the semen used in VikingGenetics countries at home market is genomic semen. 99% is genomic and has been for last year as well, and I'm sure it will continue like that. When a bull is daughter proven, farmers do not turn back to him because they are working with grandsons of this bull, and those grandsons are better than the bull is, the old bull that has just been daughter proven. So there's not a demand for these bulls, but then the bulls are available for export. But note underneath sex semen use going from 30% in 2017 to 92% last month, and part of the reason behind the huge increase is there is a ban for culling newborn bull calves from 1st of January 22. So Jersey farmers cannot cull their newborn bulls any longer, and they have found other ways. They use sexed semen, and then they use beef. 31% of all jerseys are inseminated with beef right now, and we expect that to increase rapidly over the coming couple of years. And there's a good reason for that, shown on the next slide. We want the genetic level of the cows of the females to be closer to the genetic level of the AI bulls. And you can do that by using sexed semen. In this case, our sexed semen is called X-Week. And you can use beef, and you can add genomic testing. And that'll mean that the level between the cows and the bulls will be lowered very much. Down in the right corner, you can see our Jersey aims. 30 to 50% best in your herd should be bred to sexed semen, to X-Week, and beef Y-Week on the rest. And that means beef semen that gives you bull calves. That's the trend, and that's what's recommended. And more farmers are doing that. Then some about our goals for 2025. We discuss and work with goals set for the next 5 to 10 years all the time. Right now, we are discussing the goal 2030. It'll be finalized within a month or two, but the current goal is 2025. And here are some of the breeding objectives for type. This is the stature, 126 to 32, with the weight, 406 kilos, how the body should be developed with focus on width and depth, feet and legs, and how we want them. It's described even further in the full description. And on the others, there are also descriptions, also in centimeters, and the final sentence, suitable for all automatic and modern milking systems. Very, very important to us. So for all traits, health trait, production traits, we have a description like that. This just to show you something about type, how we work with that, so that we can measure ourselves and our progress. Are we moving in the right direction? And discuss all the time, or every fifth year with farmers, should we adjust our goals in future. Next slide showing the body weight in first, second, and third lactation, and overall we have a goal of 460 kilo, and we are around 460 kilos average on Jersey cows right now across lactations, and the stature 130 centimeters. As shown before, it's right now 129.5. There's not been a lot of development in this last couple of years, but 130 is our preferred stature of the cows, and especially with introduction of feed efficiency, we have decided not to make them taller. Then about profiles and type. We will in future work with two main profiles. The NTM profile with the emphasis and weight according to the value of the trait, and it fits where you have conditions like the European. So this will still be our main profile, but there will be another profile that we have started to work with already, and in near future will be more strict or working for this milk profile. You would say it's more like a US profile, a modified JPI profile with focus on production, but still with emphasis on health and efficiency. So under these two profiles, we'll have some sub-profiles, and one of them will be type. So there will be some NGM bulls, high NGM bulls, that are also type bulls. There will be some milk profile bulls that will also be type bulls. Some will be polled, some will be grazing type profile bulls, and the majority will be profitability bulls as well. When we have profitability and polled, they are not necessarily the same, because we put so much emphasis on the polled right now that not all of the polled bulls breed the best profitability. We have some bulls that fit well in the sub-profile type bulls, and they are shown here: Casino, Dan P, Domino. And this is a type of bull that we love to have. These bulls, in this case here, I've only shown the type and the conformation, breeding values for conformation on the bulls. But these bulls, you can see that Casino and Domino, then they have the 26 NGM or 25 NGM, and Dan P 19, but he's a polled, he's a little bit lower. But they are good production bulls as well, good health bulls as well, good fertility bulls as well. So these are bulls with a good NGM profile and with the type following, and this is an ideal bull for us. So you would say in breeding for type mare will definitely be a part of our future, and there will be more and more of this profile, because this is an ideal profile, not only to us breeding the bulls, but definitely also to most Jersey breeders around the world. So I'm sure they will be attractive. On the last slide, just summing up a little bit, we recommend that you breed efficient medium-sized cows that produce milk with high levels of milk solids. It is profitable, it is beneficial for all. We recommend to achieve the balanced breeding goal, and to rely on the sire profiles that we can afford, that we can offer to you, and improve fertility, health, longevity, and functional conformation. And then we offer you both outcross and genetic diversity and purebred bulls at the same time. And lastly, we put a lot of emphasis on lifetime production and daily profit, and a good life as a dairy farmer. This was what I prepared, and I'd like to hear if you have comments, questions to the last part of it.
Yep, there's a number of questions here, Peter, for you. One from earlier, just in terms of what's the average lactation yield in Denmark in kilos of milk?
Yeah, it's I showed it in one of the first slides. 7,600 kilograms of milk with 6.0 and 4.29. So 7,600 kilos. But note, 7,600. It's average annual production across lactations. It's not 3 or 5 days.
Okay, then polled jerseys. Any goals in your breeding program?
Yes, in the goal for 25, we have a goal of 10% of the top bulls being polled. Right now, 17% of our bulls are polled, but not 17% of the top bulls. So we are struggling a little bit. We had hoped to be have come further, but we are lagging behind some of the other leading Jersey populations. We started too late. We have most of our polled bulls today are with having the polled trait from US bulls, but we have 2 right now where the polled gene comes from New Zealand. and it is also part of the diversity. We'd like to offer bulls with different pedigrees.
Okay, next question. Do you think the US Jersey averages are impacted by the larger percent Holstein in that population, i.e. milk frame udder? Is the data available on what percent of the US Jersey is actually non-Jersey content?
I do not know about the exact percentages, but still it's quite a large proportion of the US population being non-pure Jersey in the way that we determine purity. I think that those that are JX and daughters of JX might milk a little more than purebred, and that there should be a little bit of hybrid wicked still, but it's very little when it's a JX 5, 6 or so. It seems that with the new evaluation model or the evaluation model that has been used in US for the last 2-3 years, they have eradicated this overestimation of the JX bulls that was there from start. Some of the JX bulls were over-evaluated, and because the system couldn't handle different types of genetics in the bulls. Today, I'm not sure that it's beneficial to have these bulls, but it's just difficult to breed away from it because there's a huge demand in the market in US.
Okay, next question. Do Viking jerseys have good availability of sex semen?
Yes, we have. Today we offer only sex semen to the farmers. All AI technicians, they have sex semen from all the bulls that we work with, and if a bull does not produce sex semen, we will use him for flushing and make some bulls for next generation, and then he will be culled. If it's a bull ranking very high, we will sell some semen on export markets, but we're not using him at domestic market. All bulls that I purchase, they should produce sex semen, and if they do not, their career will be very short.
Okay, next question is, which beef breed do you use?
We use approximately 60%, 60-70% Danish blue. It's a line of Belgian blue that's bred for easy calvings. And then we use approximately 10%, 20% Angus, 10% Charolais, and then a little of some others. But the blue is the dominant because the calves are easy born, small at birth, and they do not develop the double muscle until after birth, and then they are very viable. They vital. They start drinking immediately. They are easy to work with, and they grow. So highly valued by both the Jersey breeder and the one specialized in feeding the calves for slaughter afterwards.
Okay, next one is, surprised that there is little emphasis on udder ligament, which is the main support of the udder.
Yes, udder ligament, the reason why we dropped having weight on udder ligament was because, or lowered the weight, was because we had too many cows with close rear teeth. So we tried to solve the problem by lowering the weight on ligament. But right now we are actually discussing to put more weight on ligament again. It's some discussion that's going on, and it will also be finalized during this winter when discussing the goal for 2030.
Okay. Then we've got another one here. Are you able to do a breeding plan for Viking jerseys to avoid potential inbreeding? And if so, can you identify traits that may need improving in my herd?
Yes. Of course, it will be very important to us that we can estimate the breeding value of your herd. So if you're a UK herd, you will have index on your cows. If, for instance, you're breeding cows or milking cows in some other European countries, you might not have breeding values, and then we only have the milk recording or your own registrations, or a parent average, where you do a parent average based on the sire of the cow and the maternal grandsire. So there are different options, but the better evaluation you have of your females today, the easier it is to make a good breeding plan for the herd. But we have a mating program called WeekMate, and WeekMate can avoid inbreeding, and you can put all kinds of goals into the WeekMate program to fulfill the aims of your herd. Matt and the UK staff are very experienced in using this program. Or wherever you come from, we can support you, and it's for free.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so I'm given the time here, I'm going to draw the webinar to a close. Any unanswered questions that we receive, we will be sure to come back to you on those questions. But I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you all for attending the webinar this evening, and also a particular thanks to Peter Larson for his presentation. So wish you all a good evening, and many thanks for attending.
Thank you.